So you have to tell Kamala Harris that you've had enough, that you just can't take it anymore. We can't stand you. You're a vice president. The worst. You're the worst vice president. Kamala, you're fired. Get the hell out of here. You're fired. Get out of here.
Harris, Eva, is now responding to the latest insult that Trump hurled against her last night.
Just before she left Georgia, she sat for an interview with Reverend Al Sharpton. And in that interview, she accused the former president of demeaning the office of the presidency and essentially arguing that he lacks the basic temperament involved for the job.
What you see in my opponent, a former president of the United States, really is, it demeans the office. And I have said, and I'm very clear about this, Donald Trump should never again stand behind the seal of the President of the United States. He has not earned the right. He's not earned the right. And that's why he's going to lose.
Joining us with more on this, Larry Sabato, the director of the Center for Politics at the University of Virginia and editor of the book, A Return to Normalcy, the 2020 election that almost broke America. Larry, thanks so much for being here.
Thank you, Jessica.
Let's start with former President Trump. His campaign says this is their closing message, that they are wrapping their arms around it. This is what they are going to close out the campaign with. And we saw the former president yesterday talking about some of the familiar themes we've heard, but then going on these meandering stories, one of which was about Arnold Palmer's naked body. Is this the closing message they want, and can it move the needle?
Well, one would hope it isn't the closing message that the staff wants, but of course they've got a candidate who frankly is around the bend and off the tracks. And this is something that, even though it's the end of the campaign, the press needs to focus on. You need to think about those 39 minutes when he pranced around the stage playing disc jockey and dancing at his own rally just a couple of days ago. The word salads that have gotten worse and more incoherent. Hey, how come this was such a critical issue for Joe Biden, who did not display these kinds of tendencies? And it isn't such a big issue for Donald Trump. He's going to be the oldest president ever sworn in, if in fact he's elected. He's going to be the oldest president in American history at the end of this next term if he gets to serve it. Why isn't that important? I think it's very important.
So I'm glad you raised that point, because I want to play a clip from this morning where our colleague Jake Tapper asked Speaker Mike Johnson for his reactions on some of those Trump remarks. So let's listen to that clip.
Is this really the closing message you want voters to hear from Donald Trump? Stories about Arnold Palmer's penis?
Well, listen, I think that the headline that I read about the rally in Pennsylvania yesterday was the big question, and it's the one that Kamala Harris has not been able or willing to answer, and that is, are you better off now than you were under the Trump administration 4 years ago?
But Larry, to your point, I think Jake mentioned this as well, reverse the roles here. If this had been Joe Biden that did that, the Republicans would be screaming up and down that he was in cognitive decline, or how dare he say this. There just does not seem to be the same outrage on their side.
Oh, there certainly is not. Look, the Republican Party has completely capitulated to Donald Trump, not just on issues, not just on policy, not just giving him the nomination 3 times for president, but even on something as important as this. If this had been Joe Biden, as you just suggested, they would be demanding that the 25th Amendment be invoked right now, today, this minute. So the Republican Party is just the Trump party. You don't expect them to say anything but what they're saying. Even the ones who were once respectable, like Governor Sununu in New Hampshire, just to mention one. There are not many Liz Cheneys out there. For the Democrats, I think they're obligated to make this an issue. They really are. I mean, we're talking about electing someone who has access to the nuclear codes and, given his age, will probably deteriorate further, maybe day by day and certainly year by year. What's it going to be like in 2 or 3 years? What's it going to be like?
And so to that end, Look, the vice president and her team clearly wanted another debate with Trump to really show that on full display to the American people. He would not agree to that. She has sharpened what she is saying about him. She's taking shots at her own, trying to draw the attention back to that. I want to play a clip of what she's been saying.
So you all know, and you've heard me say, look, I think, and I do believe Donald Trump is an unserious man. And the consequences of him ever being again in the White House are brutally serious. Brutally serious.
So, Larry, we know that the vice president is so far doing historically well with women. The gender gap is something we talk about a lot. She doesn't do as well with men. They are more tilted toward Donald Trump. And there's been a lot of talk about black men in particular, Latino men who might be more interested in Donald Trump. Do you think this sort of line of attack that we're hearing from her is helpful in moving the needle with those demographics and reminding American voters about this side of Donald Trump?
Yes, and remember, it's young white males too. I'm sorry to say they are. Look, it's 2024, and here we are in a situation where, once again, an argument needs to be made by men in order to reach men. That's the sad reality. So Kamala Harris saying these things, while important, she's potentially the president. She needs male substitutes to make that case. President Obama, President Clinton. She needs those male substitutes to get out there and say it to the young men and the older men who will listen to that, whether they're black or white or Latino. At this point, it almost doesn't matter. They need to see that Donald Trump has deteriorated. It's one of the most important messages of the entire campaign. There are only 16 days left, but 16 is also a big number when you consider that it's a 24-hour-a-day campaign from here on out.
Yeah, it certainly is. All right, Larry Sabato, always great to talk with you. Thanks so much for your analysis there.
Thank you, Jessica.